I'm very sure that today's day has been very exciting and knowledgeable for all of us. But we have someone with us who will help us summarize this entire day in his kind words. So allow me to invite him. He is responsible for creating and promoting the NTT data brand in India, APJ, both internally and externally, for retaining and attracting talent, as well as provide marketing shared services support to other NTT group companies globally. He's a member of NASSCOM's India Marketing Chapter and the Indo-Japan Council. He participates in various industry-led speaking engagements and has been associated with the Bangalore Academia as a visiting industry faculty member. So please welcome Mr. Ankur Dasgupta, please. Thank you so much, Ankur, for joining in. Hope you're doing very well.
I am Pooja. Thank you so much for such a glowing introduction. And here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ankur Dasgupta, Vice President of Marketing and Communications for NTT Data's operations in India, Asia Pacific, and Japan, along with being on point for global corporate social responsibility. And I'm truly thrilled and humbled to join you for this Market Summit. The MarTech Summit has always been close to my heart and something that we take real pride in organizing and being part of every year. This has been a phenomenal day of knowledge sharing with tremendous light thrown into a variegated spectrum of marketing and tech. We are witnessing an era where the orthodox ways of marketers are transitioning. And more than just witnessing, this group is driving marketing to a new era and an unconventional era that is highly influenced by the amazing advancement of digital tech around us. Many factors create urgency for change, such as the need to increase productivity and be more efficient and profitable, and the challenges of a shortage of talent and how does one sustain operations when you can't find enough people. We know about that. The great resignation year, isn't it? We know how difficult it is to find talent and how easily people are jumping ship across the board, across industries that we are hearing of, especially these last 2 years. And what has been and become the most prominent challenge is ensuring a high quality customer experience. When we decided as a sales and marketing group driven by NASSCOM Western region to think about how to address these fundamental changes, we determined that several questions seem to be the most urgent, such as, what can we do to help companies grow faster? How should marketing evolve as a result of the ongoing pandemic? How can we determine the best automation tools or platforms for lead generation? And how can we discover the most effective channel or channels for customer communications? The questions go on, and we are seeking the best answers. In the past session, it was clear that in an environment of rapidly changing customer expectations, conventional marketing dictums no longer hold true. There is in fact a dire need for marketeers to arm themselves with the right tools and be on top of emerging trends. This is what led us as a council to reevaluate the 4 Ps of marketing, and hence the theme for this year's Summit on MarTech, Rethinking the 4 Ps, a new marketing technology paradigm. Under this theme, we seek to recognize what should be centralized and what should be bespoke. We seek to identify where consistency helps and where it hinders. And we seek to highlight the confluence of strategies, operations, and technologies required to drive growth. The search for the best answers yielded this amazing day of great speakers, sessions, topics, ideologies, insights, and strategies, all reflecting the wide scale of changes we have observed in recent times. There have been some very interesting and fruitful deliberations on the major challenges faced by marketers, such as managing spend by rational, digital, and on-ground marketing mix, curating the competitive landscape to win mindshare in the marketplace, learning about marketing and branding strategies, and keeping score for usability testing and experimentation. From MarTech Pathshala, it's a Hindi word, it means a classroom, in the morning, we came to understand the most significant challenges marketeers face: reacting in time, making the right decisions, and making omnichannel journeys the power of analytics. We also learned how organizations are redefining their pricing and promotion strategies with more personalized value propositions for customers, while also identifying opportunities to optimize their spend on promotions. And we found different strategies that companies use to develop a marketing budget. We learned about impactful marketing tools such as conversational messaging and how it can gear up customer engagement to drive revenues and increase market share growth. One of the most significant sessions, and if you really think about it, what's marketing without? Philip Kotler, isn't it? Yes, we also learned from the father of modern marketing, Professor Dr. Philip Kotler himself, who explored the alphabet soup of marketing. What a great pleasure it has been for all of us to hear from the master himself. We now know the importance and methodology of achieving a 360-degree perspective of each customer. And we know how to engage them in contextualized conversations that result in increased revenue. We now see the need from single channel to multi-channel experiences and ultimately to an omni-channel experience. And we learned about brands achieving personalization at scale during our session on Reimagine MarTech for digital customer experience. That session encouraged us to be adroit in how we focus on creating and delivering a customer experience that resonates with that individual. We also learned how tech is enabling marketeers to personalize their campaigns and messaging, and marketeers have an obligation to use technology responsibly. Today, we have also studied the importance of revisiting and innovating strategies for revenue growth, and we spoke about the recommended approaches to today's common challenges that apply to each business uniquely, and how to distinguish the factors for fast-growing sales, namely commitment to the future, focusing on key aspects of digital, using sales analytics, investing in people's mindset, and keeping leadership vision and action aligned. Elite panel experts gave us incredible insights on new age marketing strategies, the latest trends, what the future holds for marketing, and how to embrace tech and innovation in marketing to drive business advantage through the best marketing mix. We are all aware of how influencer marketing has transformed how people think about marketing and also how that has revolutionized businesses promoting their products and services. Influencers, in fact, are quickly becoming one of the most important online marketing channels and assets. On behalf of the council, I want to thank Sugar Cosmetics co-founder and CEO, Ms. Vinita Singh, for sharing recipes for choosing the right influencers for business, how to measure results, what major risks are involved, how to use influencer marketing to add brand value, and how to determine if influencer marketing is right for every business. Also, it was fascinating to glimpse how marketeers could leverage metaverse and Web 3.0 and the fusion of gaming, media, and even the retail landscape to give consumers the close to touch and feel experience they seek. My colleague, Megan Lockwood, VP Marketing at Entity Data and an award-winning marketeer, delivered a keynote and chaired the session, Innovative Strategies for Revenue Growth. Amazing insights, Megan. This has been a useful day, a fruitful day indeed, with profound learnings and empowering deliberations. And all this very fittingly sets the stage for Professor Jerry Wind, who will help us by sharing his understanding of what it means to rethink the 4 Ps. Dr. Wind is an internationally renowned and award-winning academician. and he is currently the Lauder Professor Emeritus and Professor of Marketing at the Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. His pioneering research on organization buying, behavior, market segmentation, conjoint analysis, and marketing strategy has made him one of the most cited authors in marketing. He is also a prolific writer, having authored and edited 30 books, published over 300 articles, and edited top marketing journals. His contributions in the field have earned numerous awards, including the 4 major marketing awards: Buckweaver, Parlin, Converse, and AMA Irwin Distinguished Educator Award. Wow. His current research explores marketing-driven business strategy, the network challenge, reinventing advertising, creativity and innovation, and challenging our mental models. I am honored and delighted to invite Dr. Wind to share his insights on what it means to rethink the 4 Ps of marketing. To sum it all, for those not touched by marketing, but have been students of science, it was almost like we had Resnick and Halliday in the house today. Dr. Kotler and Dr. Wind, thank you for gracing yourselves with your presence. And with that, over to Dr. Wind.
Thank you so much, Ankur, for summarizing this entire day in such a clear and crisp manner. I'm sure our audiences has got a run through as to what exactly happened the entire day. And of course, a big, big thank you to Professor Jerry for taking our time and doing this for us. It's absolutely a pleasure, sir. Over to you, Professor Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Wind, and I'm delighted to join the MarTech Summit 2022. Our topic today is Rethinking the 4 Ps, a new marketing technology paradigm. The 4 Ps of marketing, the product, price, promotion, and place, were introduced by McCarthy in the 60s as the 4 interrelated elements of the marketing mix that a firm could target at mostly passive consumers. 60 years later, most marketing strategies still include the 4 Ps. Yet, what is meant by each of the 4 Ps has changed dramatically, and so has marketing and marketing-driven business strategies. In 2022, 4 Ps have little to do with what it was in the 1960s when the concept was first introduced. These changes are mostly due to the enormous advances in science and technology and their impact on consumer behavior. The purpose of our session is to briefly discuss the technologically empowered consumers. And that's really the critical thing to remember. Consumers today are technologically empowered, and the implication of this to the 4 Ps and the role of marketing. And thus, our purpose is to propose a new marketing paradigm for our time. When you look at the changes in consumer behavior, let me try to review briefly some of the key changes. First, consumers are empowered by AI and other technological advances. Imagine that every one of the consumers has a smartphone, and on smartphone they have AI-empowered tools that provide them not only what they get today from Google, which is a search based on what's available out there, but validated information on any topic that they're interested in. Imagine the analogy of what Wharton has done with Sloan Kettering, where they're using Wharton as a way to help the physicians diagnose problems, and then once they diagnose the cancer, a treatment for it. Imagine that this type of tool is available on any domain that a consumer is interested in, and allowing them to be by far more informed and knowledgeable about any topic that is being discussed. The second change, think about that consumers are always on. They're never without a smartphone. There are some studies that show that they go to sleep with the smartphone and they check their email. The first thing they wake up in the morning, they check their email. And we're moving beyond just having the smartphone as the device. Think about wearables. Think about glasses, the advances in glasses and other wearables, or in the future, even implementable devices. Think about the third change, which is consumers are spontaneous and experiential. Consumers are looking for experiences. They're not just buying products and services, they're looking for the experiences. 4, consumers go through a complex buying center and process. And that's especially true for high involvement decisions. They're no longer the traditional stimulus response model. Consumers see an ad and they react to. Consumers go through an elaborate process. Just think about the concept of ZMAT, the zero moment of truth, that was found a few years back by Google, that showed that over the vast majority of consumers, before they do anything, they go on a search. In terms of the fifth change, think about the fact that consumers seek a seamless experience through all omni-channel touchpoints. It's not either retail or e-commerce. It's a combination of the two. The consumers are seeking this seamless experience through all the touch points that they are engaged in. And 6, consumers really value personalization. They don't want a generic type solution. They want to be able to personalize for them. And there are 2 ways of personalization, and we'll talk about this when we kind of approach toward the implication to the 4 Ps. 7, consumers go beyond their role as consumers, especially the younger generation. They're purpose-driven. We cannot look at the consumer historically just in their role as consumers. We have to look at and understand their totality, the total roles and activities that are involved in, and the much greater concern about society, about having a positive impact on society, not only by them, but by the company they buy their product and by the companies they work for. They're much more purpose-driven. 8, consumers are increasingly skeptical and don't trust institutions. If you just follow the Edelman trust score every year, you'll see a continuous decline in the level of trust in all institutions, including businesses. And consumers are responsive to the RAFES criteria that we established in the book we published a few years ago on Beyond Advertising, based on thought leadership of over 200 major advertising and marketing experts. And the RAFE criteria stand for the following when you're looking for effective advertising or any message, even a product. You know, to what extent you're relevant and respectful, to what extent you're actionable, to what extent you're providing valuable insight to the consumers, valuable in terms of both emotionally and cognitively. And increasingly, we know that the emotionally is by far more powerful and important than the cognitively, as well as monetarily. The next item is experiential. Consumers are looking for the experience. And we talked before about the consumers are spontaneous and experiential. Increasingly, we know the consumers want to have the ability to have real-time personalized experience. And the final item in the RAFE criteria is a shareable story. Not only that it's a story and a compelling story, but it's motivating enough to have it shared with others. And finally, thinking about consumers as having going through an active and dynamic journey. So it's not just seeing an ad and reacting to it, or seeing a product and buying it, but this is a culmination of a pretty active and dynamic journey that consumers go through. We can continue on and on in discussing the changes in consumer behavior, but I think those 10 items give you a feel for the fact that the reality that we're dealing with today, the consumer of today, is dramatically different than the one that was in the 60s when the 4 Ps were introduced. Increasingly, when we talk about the consumer, we have to remember that we've been going now through the pandemic period. McKinsey have been doing continuous studies of consumers worldwide during this period. And the general finding is that not only they are kind of re-examining what they do in terms of should they postpone purchase or eliminate certain purchases, but given the uncertainty involved, given the experience they're going through, most consumers are using this as a time for reflection, asking, why are we doing what we're doing? Should we do things differently? And that's pretty fundamental and important to our understanding of the changing consumer behavior. Now, these trends have enormous implications to the nature of the product, if you talk about the product from the 4 Ps, and especially the need to provide much more personalized offering and experience, and not just a physical product. It has an implication to price, including, for example, the option of name your own price. And it has huge implication to promotion and place, including all touch points during the consumer journey at any time, at any place. These are pretty fundamental changes from the traditional 4 Ps. And every company has to adjust it given their unique situation, the customers they're dealing with, the competitive market they're dealing with, and their product and services. But in addition to redefining the 4 Ps, we really have to consider 4 additional Ps which are dominant today. Now, the first one is personalization. As I mentioned before, when we talk about the consumer behavior, consumers want increasingly to have a personalized experience. There are 2 ways of personalizing. One is you can have a lot of data and information about the consumer, perhaps even augmented with AI and other sophisticated models. And in which case you can direct specific personalized offering to the consumer. Netflix is a great example of offering you specific recommendation based on the enormous amount of data they have about your preferences. But there is a second approach. And the second approach relates to the next P, which is platformization, which is that you have a platform that allows the consumers to personalize their offering for them. So you create platform that encourages the consumer to design their own product and services based on their interaction with the platform. And there are numerous examples for this in terms of even from sneakers and other products that people can now kind of personalize. The third P we have to take into account in today's environment explicitly is purpose. We talked before when we discussed the changes in consumer behavior about the fact that many of them are looking now for purpose, both in their own life, in what they buy, with where they work. But we also know that corporations are increasingly adding the purpose dimension to their activities. And the fourth new P that we have to take into account is performance. The overall output of what's happening, the kind of the satisfaction. What are the performance measures we're looking at? And it's not just buying a product, but what are the implications of this to the well-being and happiness of the consumer? So increasingly, we really have to start asking the question of what are the new measures, the new metrics that consumers are using for evaluating how happy and satisfied they are with their life. And similarly, the performance that the company has to consider, not only in terms of short-term, the sales, but also the long-term impact, the long-term in terms of lifetime value of the customer, but also in terms of what type of experiments they can perform today to try to create and prepare themselves for the future. We have to consider both the new interpretation of the 4 Ps as they are implemented by different companies, as well as the new 4 Ps we just covered. And equally critical, however, are the implications of these trends in consumer behavior on the role of the CMO and the marketing executive. And that's really where the real change is occurring. And the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, is shifting from the traditional role, which was just, okay, let me try to implement or be in charge of the traditional 4 Ps, to becoming truly the champion of consumer orientation in the design of all of business strategy. And it's not only in the marketing department, but it's for the business as a whole. Consider, for example, movements such as the orientation of front to back approach that Emphasis introduced, which rethink the whole orientation of a company centered around the customer. But in addition to being the champion of consumer orientation and introduce the importance of the consumer and centering the business decision on them and working with them perhaps as co-designers, co-creators of the product and service offering. But the second and most critical role of the CMO or the Chief Marketing Officer, whatever their titles are, is as the orchestrators of all the internal and external functions that deliver a real-time customer experience through all the touch points of the consumer journey. And that's really the key role of how do you become the orchestrators of all these internal and external functions. Because to deliver what the consumer wants, the real-time experience through all touch points, at any time, at any place, you have to coordinate all the other functions of the organization. You have to work with the R&D, with manufacturing, with logistics, with the human resource group. You have to be the orchestrator of the delivery of this value to the consumer. And not limiting this only internally, but also externally. And not relying only on your internal talent that you have in the organization, but relying increasingly on the enormous impact and value of open talent as a result of open innovation and other available talent globally that you can engage in the delivery of the benefits that you're looking for. This leads to a fundamental change in the role of the CMO. And this is reflected, for example, by the fact that increasing number of organizations are changing the name of the CMO. They don't call it only Chief Marketing Officer, but either they add to this other title like Chief Marketing Officer and Digital Officer, or Chief Marketing and Consumer Officer, or the like, or companies that come up with titles they don't even have the word marketing in them, like Chief Client Experience, or Chief Growth Officer, or Chief Revenue Officer, and the like. This is really recognition of the changing role of the Chief Marketing Officer. So you cannot just rely on the manipulating the 4 Ps, trying to change a little bit and tweak the traditional 4 Ps, or adding even the 4 new Ps that I suggested before. But it really requires to rethink the whole role of marketing in the corporation as the orchestrator of all those internal and external functions and resources that are designed to deliver real-time customer experience through all touch points of the consumer journey. Thus, we do not face the old marketing paradigm in which the marketer was the designer of the 4 Ps strategy, but rather a new paradigm of the marketing executive as the orchestrator of all the internal and external touch points required to effectively deliver real-time, personalized customer experience. In conclusion, to get the most out of our session, it is not enough to rethink the 4 Ps. Actions are required. It will be ideal if you could design an experiment that will leverage the technologically empowered consumer trends we discussed and their implication to marketing and the role of the CMO. And the focus on experimentation is critical because that's the only way in which we can actually learn what works, what doesn't work, and modify and change as needed. All the companies that we all admire, the Amazon, the Google, the Facebook, and others, they're engaged in thousands of experiments every day. They don't move without experimenting. The technology is here and you can easily do it. And I would strongly encourage each one of you to identify the one aspect from my discussion and from all the other sessions you're attending and design an experiment around it to try to see, what are the implications? Does it work? Doesn't it work? And especially when you're designing the experiment, ask yourself the question, how can you leverage the technologically empowered consumer trends we discussed, which have huge implication to marketing and the role of the CMO. If you'll design these experiments and learn from them, and if they work, scale them big. If they don't work, kill them and start another experiment. If you'll move toward this orientation of continuous experimentation, you will be able to get the most out of rethinking the traditional 4 Ps or traditional approaches to marketing and take advantage and leverage the benefit of what we know about consumers and how they can engage with you. Look at the consumer as your partner, as co-creators, your co-designers, and together design the type of solutions that they seek that will lead to accomplishment of their objectives as well as yours, both in the short and long term. I hope it's helpful. If you start implementing experiments and have any questions, feel free to contact me at my email, which is down here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, sir. Firstly, thank you for doing this for us. It was absolutely a very insightful session. I think what you mentioned, times are changing outside and very rapidly. So all these techniques also needs to be changed for all of us to really gear up and reach at the highest level of actually the quality, the quantity, and all of this. So thank you very, very much. Please take care and be safe.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice meeting you all.
Thank you. A big thank you to all our audience for staying with us and listening to our great speakers, sharing their insightful deliberations and perspectives and knowledge on marketing, sales, and technology for the overall growth of the ecosystem. We are very sure that you have gathered a lot of takeaways from the day full of engrossing discussions and hearing the global leaders. NASSCOM would also like to thank all the speakers for deep diving into the challenge of marketing faced by the modern day marketers. Thank you once again to our sponsors for being part of us and for this amazing day. Our platinum sponsor, NTT Data and Hansa Security, our gold partner, Gupshup, our silver sponsor, Advanced Auto Parts, and our associate sponsor, Fusion Hawk. All right, on that note, goodbye everyone. See you again next year with more and more interesting topics and way forward to many other challenges to embrace and win over from. Thank you very much. Please have a lovely day. Take care.